On my sister's third-month celebration, my mom announced that she'd be going out into the streets to feed a few beggars. Her fans all contributed some amount of money to her as support. However, rather than feeding real beggars, my mom and her boyfriend hired a few people, had them pretend to be beggars, and position in the places they'd planned to visit. My name is Chris. It's my 15th birthday today, and my adoptive parents are putting things up for my birthday party. It all still feels like a dream because I'd never had a birthday celebration. My real mother never acknowledged it when I was with her. You might be wondering why I'm with adoptive parents. Well, my mother was obsessed with social media and couldn't care less about her children. All she was focused on was her fame and the money it made her. She was ready to do anything to maintain it. At the tender age of 3, I knew what a camera was as my mother was always putting it in my face. She got famous first by using me. To her fans, I was a disabled child. My mother would force bitter tablets in my mouth before turning on the camera. The tablets made me drool uncontrollably, and sometimes made me throw up. I was forced to pretend to not know how to speak whenever she turned the camera on. I was also made to start using a wheelchair from age 6, even though I had no problem walking, because she didn't want anyone knowing about my true state of health. She didn't send me to a regular school. She had her elder sister, who was a teacher, homeschool me. My aunt was bad in her own way. I never understood what she taught, as she was always in a rush. And when I made a small mistake, I got the beating of my life. When I was 9, my mom got pregnant with my younger sister. Every day, she would sit in front of her camera, fake crying and asking her followers to pray for her, as she was stressed enough by me and didn't want another disabled child. One day, before starting her usual live sessions, she asked me to throw up in front of the camera while being fed. I refused. Why should I do that, Mom? I never throw up while eating.
Are you talking back to your mother? You must do as I say if you don't want to experience death. Do you understand?
I was scared because I didn't want to die. Once she started the live session, she began talking about a community of disabled children she recently started taking care of from some of the money she made from her job as a chef. And as always, she talked about how stressful it was, combining all that with me, her disabled son. I couldn't believe how much lies she was making up. Firstly, she hardly ever left the house, so the community of disabled children, which she claimed to be funding, didn't exist. Also, she wasn't a chef. What my mother did was prepare food at home and lie to them that it was for customers. And I wasn't disabled. I could do everything within the capacity of a normal child. While telling all those lies, she kept feeding me pudding, knowing how much I got irritated by even the sight of it. When I couldn't take it anymore, I was forced to throw up. My mother let out a scream, feigning shock. I looked up to her and realized that tears had quickly formed in her eyes.
Why are you doing this to me, Jake?
My mom never called me by my real name in front of her followers. I was known as Jake. She was in tears. I mean, she'd wanted a reaction from me, and that's why she forcefully fed me the pudding. Did she have to cry?
Why are you making me so sad?
I couldn't break out of the character she'd created for me, so all I could do was stare at her while she ranted. She had to finish up the live session earlier than planned. A few months later, my sister was born. Although she was only my half-sister, I loved her. My mom's boyfriend, Brian, who'd been living with us for a year, was the father of my sister. I had no idea who my father was, or if he was still alive somewhere. One night, a few months after my sister was born, I left my room to get water in the kitchen, and overheard my mom and her boyfriend discussing ways they could involve my sister in her deceit. I quickly burst into the kitchen. "I'm not gonna let you do that, Mom," I told her.
You little rat. How much more do I have to warn you to watch your mouth?
He's not gonna learn with just words. I'll teach him the hard way. That night, I was given the beating of my life. While my mom stood and watched, her boyfriend hit me to the extent that my ankle got broken, and a huge lump appeared on my forehead. I crawled back to my room in heavy tears and pain. The next day, when her followers asked what happened to me, she lied that I'd fallen from the staircase while she went away to empty the trash can. After that, she revealed that she had a huge reveal to make. Now, my mom had never shown what my sister looked like to her audience. When she suddenly brought her from her room, I was shocked to see my sister having extremely long hair. The previous night, she still had her short, curly hair. As much as I badly wanted to ask what was going on, I had to save it until the live was over. My mother lied and said that my sister was born with very long hair, which grew extraordinarily fast. She further stressed that she'd cut my sister's hair off twice since birth, but the hair grew so quickly. In reality, when my sister was born, she barely had any hair on her head. But of course, my lying mother always had everything planned out. Her followers immediately took a liking to my sister. That day, my mother made more money than she'd ever gotten. I knew because I overheard her again while she was talking about it with her boyfriend. She's more profitable than that son of yours. This is why we should sell him off. My jaw dropped in shock. He'd been proposing for my mom to sell me?
Right? We should sell him and tell everyone he got lost. He's beginning to piss me off lately.
I couldn't believe my ears. I ran back to my room without the water I'd gone for. For the next few weeks, my sister appeared more in front of our mom's camera than I did. As much as it made me happy that I was gradually getting freed, I felt bad for my sister, who had to endure wearing that uncomfortable wig every day. On my sister's third-month celebration, my mom announced that she'd be going out into the streets to feed a few beggars. Her fans all contributed some amount of money to her as support. However, rather than feeding real beggars, my mom and her boyfriend hired a few people, had them pretend to be beggars, and position in the places they'd planned to visit. My mother also had us take a tasteless pill that sent us into dreamland a few minutes later, before she and Brian took the cameras and left the house. I woke up hours later to find a sachet of the pills forgotten in my room. I quickly grabbed it and hid it under my bed. The videos of them feeding the beggars went viral in the media, getting her even more fans, and of course, more money. Seeing that more money was brought from the new scheme, my mom decided to add that to using us. On some days, we would appear on her camera. On other days, she'd go out to feed her hired beggars. For a moment, I did think their plan to sell me off was no longer going to happen, until I walked in on them discussing it in the living room. I quickly hid behind the curtain to avoid being seen. Brian had already made the negotiations with the buyers, and they'd be coming during the night of the following day. Sweat gathered in my face as I trembled in fear. I returned to my room and thought deeply about how to prevent it. I needed to protect my sister from being a victim of that in the future. After a long time, I finally figured out what to do. The next day, my mom ordered me to bring Brian and her a glass of water each. That was my chance. I quickly took 2 of the pills and dissolved them in each glass of water before taking it to them. A few minutes later, when I returned to the living room, they were both resting on each other, deeply asleep. I quickly grabbed my mom's phone. I unlocked it, and following how I'd been watching her begin her live session, I started one. Of course, her fans were surprised seeing me alone on their screens. Hello everyone, I'm Chris, not Jake. Jake doesn't exist, and I'm not disabled. I've never been disabled, I revealed to them. Comments flowed in, all expressing their shock. I told them all about my mother's tricks, and also their plans to sell me off that night and disguise it to look like a robbery. I also revealed how I'd put them to sleep using the same pill she used on my sister and I. Then I called out our home address and begged them to contact the police before the buyers arrived. Luckily, they were quick to respond. I kept the live going, and soon, a police vehicle pulled into the driveway. The cops came in and hid inside and outside the house. Afterward, I turned off the live. The buyers arrived a few minutes later. They barged into the living room and found my mom and Brian asleep. What's going on? I was hiding behind the chairs with the cops. Next thing we heard was another voice saying they should leave. We immediately got out of our hiding place. On seeing the cops, the buyers quickly pulled out their guns. I'll shoot if you come any closer. Hearing their threat, the cop beside me clicked on a device behind him, and in a second, 5 policemen quietly walked in through the open door. Before the buyers could attack, the cops hit them on their heads with their guns and sticks, causing them to collapse to the floor. We were all taken to the station, my mom and Brian still asleep. Once we got to the station, a child care agency was immediately contacted, and we were taken away by them. My mom and Brian woke up hours later and found themselves in a cell with the buyers who regained consciousness before them. From what I heard from some of the child care staff, they also used to be fans of my mom. She'd lost all her followers, and her account had been brought down after a lot of people reported it for fraud. A week later, they were taken to court. My mom, Brian, and the buyers all claimed to be not guilty, but all evidence pointed to the opposite. Throughout the trial, my mom continuously sent piercing glares at me, but I refused to be intimidated. And when it was my turn, I gave my testimony and told the courtroom everything that had actually been happening. My mom was sentenced to 17 years imprisonment for fraud, child abuse, and attempted human trafficking. Brian was giving 15 for child abuse and attempted human trafficking, while each of the buyers got 20 years. Each for human trafficking, as investigation revealed that they'd been doing it for years. Before she was taken away to prison, my mother glared at my sister and
I hope you both never receive love from anyone.
It was quite harsh for a mother to say that to her children. The child care agency took good care of us until it was time to take us to an adoption center. We were only there for 2 weeks before our adoptive parents came and adopted both of us. We've been with them for nearly 5 years. I'm in my last year in junior school, and my sister's almost done with her primary education. I haven't seen my mom since that day at the courthouse, and I sincerely wish I never do again. Life is better without her. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.